Hey everyone, I'll just give it a couple more minutes to let people join. Okay, so let's begin. So welcome everyone. This is the April 14th AMA with the delivery team. So we'll be answering any questions you have about GitLab releases and deployments. So Stan, you have the first question.
Sure. I was just curious, you've been doing the migration for a while, and I'm just curious if there's anything that sticks out about what surprised you about this migration, about Kubernetes, and is there anything you might have done differently having done that?
That's a great question. Who would like to take the first answer?
I'll try to start a little bit. I think what has surprised me the most is just the length of time it requires to do the necessary investigation, learning, and application of that knowledge to migrate a service into Kubernetes. I wish it was kind of faster. I learned you can't compare a virtual machine to a Kubernetes pod like apples to apples. There are significantly different ways that the infrastructure is running, significantly different methods in which the pods are executing compared to the way our applications execute inside of our virtual machines. I can't say I would change anything based on that, but that was probably the hardest hurdle for me to try to climb over. I think our use of our Helm chart and dogfooding has been an interesting method of deploying GitLab. And it's made our lives quite easy. It's kind of changed or we've been able to take away a lot of changes that we need and bring them into our chart to introduce changes that better our chart for the most part. But yeah, just the ability to learn our application and figure out how to best take those and build that same thing into Kubernetes has been the most difficult part. Yeah, performance monitoring is what I find difficult right now.
Yeah, and I think from sort of joining partway through, for me, it's been interesting. I think it's the surprise is some of the unknowns. So, there are definitely things which we just can't anticipate. And then when we start serving traffic on staging, for example, we suddenly uncover a whole new thing. So it's sort of tempting to feel like, oh, if we'd sat down up front and thought about this, we'd have definitely caught it. But there are so many things we definitely would. It's only when we actually see how the application runs on Kubernetes that we catch a lot of these things. So maybe I suppose my biggest surprise, I suppose, coming in sort of partway through is just learning how complicated the application is, because that's really, there's so many moving pieces and like so many aspects to this migration. It's certainly been a lot bigger than sort of like previous ones I've seen.
Yeah, I wish Jarv was here to answer this precise question, because there's a lot of learning that I need to do, just the application stack in general, that Jarv would know a lot better than I would. And he probably saved me from a lot of potential mistakes during the migration process, which I greatly appreciate.
And I'm sure he's also learned quite a lot as he's gone through as well, right? So there's definitely lots of, it's not just sort of learning the Kubernetes, it's learning how does the GitLab application work on Kubernetes. So thank you for asking that, Stan.
Great, thanks.
John, over to you.
Yeah. So everybody now knows Jihu. So they are going to start building their own releases from 13.11. So basically this upcoming release, and moving forward, they will own all the releases themselves. So I'm just wondering, because of the two repo setup, I'm wondering if we have any facilities for them to automate the process as much as possible. For example, one challenge is like for our security releases, we decided the workflow is they cut their release after we publish our release. So if we can shorten that window, that will certainly help to reduce the risks to the Jihu specific customers. So I'm just wondering if we have any tooling or facility or any hooks available for them to see here is an event trigger, then they can automate their process as much as possible. I know automating the entire process may not be feasible, but something is better than nothing. So I'm just wondering if we have any facilities to automate that, or do we consider to make something available for them?
Stan, do you want to verbalize?
Yeah, first my question is, how are they actually doing deploys? Are they planning on just using Omnibus? Are they planning on using Kubernetes?
They are right now. They are piloting with Omnibus, but eventually, I think right now it's going to be a mixed or hybrid configuration. So both VM and some charts.
And
but this is really about cutting their. Sorry.
Okay, now I was going to ask another question on top of this, which is, so what's their deployment schedule? So they're building on top of target release, and say I suppose they have their own. No, I know they have their changes, their own features. So the idea is that they pack things together after we tag any stable release and deploy it, or are they kind of doing something more likely to our auto deploy, so more continuous deployment?
Oh yeah, so this is more about the self-managed releases, because they cut their self-managed releases. They use GET to do their SaaS deployment, and the SaaS still not available yet, but they plan to use GET to deploy a hybrid environment. But this question is more about the self-managed releases, because the patch and the security releases, they have to wait until the delivery team cut the release. So this is more about that process, self-managed process.
Okay, thank you for clarification. I wasn't really aware of this detail. So I think that what we have right now, which acts in some way of a notification system, is our versions.gitlab.com, which is exactly the same thing that tells in your instance if needs to be upgraded. So maybe because I don't know the details of how this is implemented, maybe they can build something on top of that so that they get notified. Because the point is knowing if it's a security release, or if they don't care, they just want to pull everything, they can just monitor tags on our public repo. This also could be an option. So I think these two are,
Yeah, I think it's just some trigger or some event notification that they can grab. So that's a signal, okay, if the code is ready, then they can start the downloading process or the pulling process, then crank the builds after the pull is done. Thank you. I think that helps.
So building on top of what Alessio said, every time we publish a security release, we immediately sync the canonical repository with the security changes. So if they are always pulling from this canonical repo, they should have like the security changes once they are ready to be, or when they were published. And when it comes to a specific notification, I think we can probably ask someone from security marketing, because they are the ones that handle like emails and the social media notification. So that might be also another idea.
Oh yeah, that's also yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mara.
Albert, do you want to verbalize your question?
Yeah, this is mostly a follow-up question because I haven't really been paying attention to why we have a secondary repo in the first place. So I was wondering if we had an idea of what kind of changes they would ever need that wouldn't be included in our made code base repository as is. Like, is it going to be something like specific to maybe their infrastructure, or maybe there's like some feature sets that may be incompatible or something that along those lines or something?
Yeah, I can give a very high level description. So they are going to contribute to our C and EE code base just as a community contributor. So that's one way to contribute. They also have a JH folder that's a JHU specific features or implementation. That's pretty much is their own. I mean, I don't know if we are going to pull that into our releases, but that's very much JHU specific. And of course, the way it works that they contribute as a community contributor, then we push back all the changes from our repo to them so they can cut the release. That's a very high level description of the working process.
And do we have somewhere where if there are any requirements for additional work for delivery needs to do, like it's not something we have prioritized at the moment, so are they building the whole thing?
Yeah, I don't think there is anything that a delivery team needs to work on at this moment. And my question is basically, if they want to automate the release process, what kind of triggers or event notification they can grab so they can automate that, because they need to pull the code from our GitLab Inc. repo, then start building the releases.
I see. Okay, fantastic. And just on this, do you know when they might be starting to automate?
No timeline. I just suggested them to do the automation. I may ask them to reach out to you or somebody on the team to figure out what is possible at this moment. Great. Or what they need.
Fantastic. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Does anybody else have a question that they'd either like to just verbalize or add into the agenda?
I noticed there was some discussion about doing rollbacks. How's that going? And like, what's sort of the plan for that?
Yes, thank you for asking. This is our favorite topic. So you can come again. Who would like to answer about rollbacks?
Yeah, I can take this one if no one else in the team wants to talk about it. Okay, so yes, we are dealing with rollbacks at the moment. So it's, I think, more than 1 month now that we are we have a weekly demo where we are rolling back staging. So we spent the last month working on failure scenario just to make sure that we polished all the rough edges around things that can go wrong. So we are at the point where we are planning to test dry run rollback in production. And then if everything works as expected, we will run our first rollback in production environment. It's, well, I don't know how much details do you want on this, but it's kind of, it's not a generic rollback. So you can only roll back one version. Reason being, there is the problem with post-deployment migration. And basically we identified the points of no returns in the process, which are post-deployment migration. So up until post-deployment migration, or if the difference between the current version, the previous one, does not include post-deployment migration, then we can roll back. And yeah, this is briefly what we're doing. So we're not touching database. We are not rolling back any type of migration. Basically, we are flipping over what we have when we run Canary, when we have two versions running at the same time. And basically we will start going backward and having the same Canary situation, and then we will just run the old version. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Is there anything gating the post-deployment migrations now? Is it just the full deploy basically, or is there something like an actual step you're going to say, we're going to now do this post-deploy thing, we're entering the point of no return?
That was the plan at the beginning of the quarter. Then we figured out that we were kind of, we still have some road to make before reaching a working pipeline. So we just, because we started with this idea, we will create an assisted rollback and then an automated rollback. And we figure out that we first need a rollback. So basically, our entry point was supposed to be identifying this point of no return and baking it with the production checks that we have. So if our metrics doesn't look good, we will not run post-deployment migration. But this basically is, yeah, not, I mean, it's far away in the future right now. So.
And I think the goal for the next sort of, once we have this pipeline tested on production, the goal will be to start using it, because the main benefit from rollbacks is quick recovery from incidents. So the first use case over Q2 will be to try and be able to roll back incidents rather than needing to hot patch them. So that's what we're working towards. Fantastic. So Myra, I like this question a lot. Please verbalize.
Yeah, thank you. So now that we are deploying every 12 hours, well, we deploy several times a day. I don't know if a lot of people remember, probably Robert and Alessio and Stan here remember when we used to deploy like from our machines, like to production, or when we had the freeze. Those were fun times. And I always like to reflect how much we have progressed from there, because now that we deploy many times a day and that we actually deploy in an automatic way, that we only push a button and then we just kind of babysit the pipeline. It is always a good thing to reflect on that.
Absolutely. I mean, even in the time, I don't remember any of those things you've mentioned, but even just in the time I've been here, like we have gone from deploying, like you just started deploying once a day just before I joined. And now we're like frustrated. Yurik was complaining the other month because he only managed 3 deploys. He was like really disappointed. So it's great progress.
Yeah, I remember how painful it was. So thanks for all the work there. Yeah, my question is more of a general one, and everyone I think at GitLab probably has an opinion. So I want to hear your opinion. If there's one thing about GitLab, at least feature-wise, you know, UI, whatever it is, that you could have development fix, what would that be?
I've got
Object
one.
storage.
Yes, object storage. But my latest complaint is sometimes when I hit merge, it doesn't want to merge. It tells me there's some problem and it just goes away. But Stan, you know about this because you posted the merge request that apparently is almost in production, hopefully.
Yeah, I have to go check on that one. But yeah, that one drove me crazy for a while too. And I finally got some time to work on that. But object storage, I'm curious to hear that about that one. Well, I know a little bit about that, but what is that? What about object storage in particular?
This is what's holding us up from completing the Sidekick migration into Kubernetes, specifically the pages feature right now. As soon as we get that part fixed, we could finish up the Sidekick migration, and we could also migrate the web servers themselves into Kubernetes as well. And that'll be very exciting because those will be our last few stateless services that are preventing us from completing that OKR.
Okay, so you're saying actually the pages migration to object storage, not just objects. Okay.
I mean, also object storage in general. I mean, it's kind of our team trying to
just generally object storage.
Yeah, we're trying to move everything to Kubernetes. So it's, I don't know, 6 engineers, whatever, compared to the rest of the organization, at least the engineering department, shipping new features that sometimes add new things written on disk instead of object storage, or not properly working in a distributed environment without shared storage or things like that. So this.
Also, broken master. This is probably not a GitLab feature, but now that we rely more and more on having a green master to, you know, create the auto deploy branches, create a package, when it is red, it is actually blocking us. So perhaps having a more faster broken master process will be very, very helpful for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, that actually impacts your deploys. It needs to be, at least the signal needs to be boosted a lot louder now, I think, right? before it was just an inconvenience. People were like, I can't merge for a couple hours, but now it's actually impeding other things.
I think if we had a way to speed up testing as well as speeding up the build process, that would put us in a better spot than we are today.
Yeah, I agree. Mine is sort of, I guess, related, but not really a feature, but is very much about the amount of, I suppose, the number of pieces inside the pipeline. So like the amount of testing and sort of feature flags and all the things that take place on staging, needing to be part of the deployment pipeline. Like I'd love all of those things to be able to happen outside of the deployment pipeline. And then at the point you just, when you merge, it's like you're literally just pushing to production and have it super fast. I think the dream is like, there was an article recently I read, and it was about deploying to, you to be able to deploy to changes to production in 10 minutes. So that's the new goal, right? Fantastic. So thanks for all the great questions. We have a few minutes left if anyone would like to ask anything else. No, fantastic. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today and for the questions. Super selection of questions. So thanks very much for those. And yeah, we'll hope to see you next month to share more of things we're up to. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.